Hey guys, it's Taz101 Saga coming to you live from lockdown Britain. Well, actually I'm still going to work, which means I've been buying some cool shit. But today we're going to talk about one of my favourite things, AKs. GHK AKs to be specific. Now it's been over 2 years since I bought this, so as I've done in the past with the Sig Sauer P226 by Tokyo Marui and other guns, I thought I'd do an update on how things have actually been going, the sort of condition it's in, the upgrades I've put into it and since I did my review a little while ago. So this is going to be quite comprehensive for anyone who wants to know how the GHK AK platform sort of holds up over time. Just a quick intro to anyone who missed my review. This is the 2016/17, depending on what site you buy it from, version of the GHK AKM. Now they had some problems with the early models like the 2011-2012 version with magazines releasing gas when you insert them and stuff like that. This fixes all those issues, so this is the current version and model that you will be buying if you order one today. I think they do change some things with each batch, so you may even see some further improvements. I don't know. But just a bit of background there. This is the later version. This has had about 6,000 rounds through it over 2 years, so it's getting around or slightly over the 6,000 mark. So let's have a look. Okay, so you've heard it 30 times, but you're going to hear it again. Apologies for the shadows and some of the awkward creeping around the camera tripod. My house is the size of a shoebox. Right, these are the things we're going to look at. So we've got this bolt carrier here, which is an extra one. The summer recoil spring. This piston here and this recoil spring are both made by FG Airsoft, which is a great company. I think they're actually out of business now in France, which is very unfortunate. And we're going to look at the magazines. For the sake of clearing space, I think we'll look at the magazines first. So the magazine you see, this one in fact, with the masking tape around it, it says, can you see that? Needs new O-rings, yeah. Now this one, she's a goner. She does need new O-rings. I'm not sure exactly why that one dried up, but it's pissing gas out of the inlet valve. The others are all working absolutely fine. Like I say, I'm not sure exactly why that one went funny, but it's an easy fix. O-rings are expendable anyway, so if you're planning to get one of these, stock up on O-rings. There is actually a repair kit you can get exclusively for the GHK AK series that has only the O-rings you need and nothing extra. Now I've been using these magazines mainly with Brute Sniper gas. That's Brute Sniper gas, if no one's ever seen it. It's made by Abbey Gun Solutions. Now this is quite popular in the UK. It's good for gas powered sniper rifles because it doesn't have any lubricant in it, I believe. It's a dry gas. So the reason that's good is it's not blasting silicone all over your hot rubber and lubricating your hot rubber. It's going to give you more consistent results in terms of accuracy and trajectory if you're firing a lot, which is probably why it says on the can it's good for rapid fire weapons. The only con of a gas like that in this sort of gun that I found is where it's dry, it's kind of like using CO2. You've got to make sure you keep the seals in the magazines and the relevant places in the rifle lubricated with silicone oil. And at the very least you need to put storage gas in your magazines. You should never leave gas magazines without gas in. That's a very bad idea. This is Predator gas. This is what replaced 134A when that disappeared from shelves. This has a high silicone content, so if you're using this, that's pretty good for storage gas actually, but you can actually get gas that is specifically for storage. It's also made by Abbey. This is what I use in my Tokyo Maruis in the middle of the summer because it's a bit lower pressure than green gas. But you can actually just fill your magazines with this, and because the silicone content is high, or the lubricant content is high should I say, it will keep your magazine seals where they should be. And I've had these filled all the time with that gas when they're not being used. Now when you end a game, for anyone that doesn't know this, you see some people that will literally just sit there on a bench and they'll push the release valve for the gas and piss all the gas out before they throw them back in their car. Never do that. There is literally no reason to let gas out of the magazines if there's still gas in there. Gas being in there is a good thing. You don't want to leave them empty. And if you do release the gas for any reason, don't do it in one go, because that will freeze the seals and cause them to crack. Just let it out in small spurts. It's the same with when you're filling gas magazines, especially in colder weather. You shouldn't hold the can down and then just fill the thing up in one go, because these things take about 7-8 seconds to fill or more. So yeah, that's a bad idea. Just don't do that. Okay, so that's a lesson for these magazines. They've been fine to me, so 2 years in, other than that one with a little minor hiccup, that's an easy fix anyway. These have all been fine, none of them have leaked. That goes to show they're not by default difficult things to use and keep working, as there seem to be a lot of myths about gas blowback rifles, that the magazines always leak. It's a nightmare trying to keep them, you know, working properly and stuff like that. Total rubbish. Right, hopefully that's focusing, I can't really tell from here, but if you look there, that's the kind of wear you can expect taking these in and out over a period of even weeks actually of using them a lot. All you're really going to get is the paint scratching off, and you'll see that's a pretty consistent symptom of use over time with these sort of guns. It's normal, so if you see that kind of thing, especially inside the rifle that you'll see in a few moments, don't worry about it, that's perfectly normal. It's still fully intact. Lips that I modified on these have been fine. These do have quite tight lips on the AKM magazines when you get them, and it's very hard to feed BBs in, even with the attached speed loader that GHK sends you in the box. So you might have to file these a little bit in like a semi-circular shape. There's plenty of guides on the internet about how to do that. I have heard that the 74 mags don't have that problem. I just read that, I don't know if it's true or not, but if you're getting tight BBs, don't worry, it's no big deal. Just file it a bit and they'll loosen up slightly over time anyway, and the springs will sort of work themselves in. I thought we'd look at this bolt carrier group first, because this is more representative of what you'll get after 2 years, due to the fact I've used this bolt carrier group in the rifle during skirmishes far more than the one that's currently in it. This is my summer setup. This is the sort of wear you can expect on the piston, the mock gas piston so to speak. That again is perfectly normal. I tend to actually grease this because it tends to scratch on the inside of the gas tube around the trunnion area. But that's normal anyway. Now if we look underneath, sorry, trying to lean over. This is where the hammer, of course, is when the bolt comes rearward, it's riding over the hammer and it's cocking the hammer here. So you're going to get a little bit of wear there, that's normal, but that really has not changed a lot. And even a bit more, it's not actually going to affect the function of the gun because the hammer comes all the way up to the top. So as long as you keep this lubricated and that lubricated, you don't want to start stuffing grease, especially if it's not rubber safe grease. You don't want to use any sort of grease that isn't safe for rubber. And you're better off using silicone oil in these light areas anyway. I tend to use grease in my AKs just because there's a lot of chunky stuff going on, but you only need to put the minimal amount. It's better to put less grease and clean it more than to chuck a load on and just leave it for months. That's not the way to do it, because that's just going to attract grime and everything. So lightly lubricate everything, especially if you're using grease. Now this is the little part here that trips the, I forget the name of the piece. It's the piece in the trigger group that will prevent the hammer from dropping unless the bolt is in battery, so to speak. That's got practically no wear on it at all. It's still perfectly sharp. These are what ride in the guides in the receiver, of course, to keep the bolt in there. Those are fine, just basic paint wear. Nothing's worn off of that. Cock and handle still perfectly sturdy. No sort of cracking, anything of that sort. All these teeth are fine. Right, so let's strip this rifle down and see mainly how the trigger group is doing. So as with anything, want to take the safety off. Don't have to rack it, but you know, make sure there's no magazine in it, make sure there's no BB up in the spout. Pop the top cover off, recoil spring comes out, which is absolutely fine. That's the stock recoil spring that it comes with, not the stronger one that you saw earlier. That's absolutely fine, no problems with that, no cracking, no bending, nothing whatsoever. That's perfect. Top cover is obviously fine. This is the plastic buffer, you can see that. Now this is needed for the gun to actually operate. The only time you won't need this is if you've got the W and S full travel kit. I silvered this myself, it's not normally silver, it's normally the same colour as the other one, but that's just something I wanted to do, because why not? Anyway, you take this out, There's the gas piston, that's all stock other than the nozzle, which you'll see in a moment. All that's left is to flip the latch up on the front and the gas tube comes off. This will get looser the more times you take it on and off. Once you've had a look at the basic internal condition, I'll then actually talk about the upgrades. I've done everything I've done to this. So let's have a little zoom in now on that trigger group. So you can see there, that's the sort of wear that you can expect again after about 6,000 rounds. Now a little interesting thing to note, I probably should have had something pointy. Actually, those scissors will do. Right, you see these O-rings right there. Now I'll forget to mention this later, so I'll talk about it now. That is the little latch which is pushed up by the empty magazine or the no dry fire switch on the magazine. When the magazine runs out of BBs and the follower up there comes to the top, that pops up. This lever in turn will activate that little switch there and it will block the hammer. So it's not quite as realistic as say the WE version of the AK, which is something the WE version does have over this in my opinion in terms of the cool factor, is you actually get that distinctive last round hammer drop. Click, so to speak, the dead man's click. Now you can't actually pull the trigger. If I pull the trigger now, it won't go up. Now the reason for that is that this piece here is not depressed by that little pointy piece on the bolt carrier. So that will prevent the hammer from dropping unless the bolt is in battery. So that's quite a cool feature actually to have that. So if this were actually being depressed because it's in battery, when I pull the trigger now, then the hammer will come up. So you can see there the back of the hammer's also got a bit of wear on it. That's from catching on the sear down here. So cock it back. And the reason those O-rings are actually on there, on this piece I showed you, is because I did have some slight issues with a couple of the magazines were not actually stopping the bolt once the rounds were gone, so it was dry firing. Now that was a little mod I saw on Facebook. People said if you put 3 little O-rings over it, it gives it a bit more of a surface to contact the no dry fire switch on the magazine, and that will actually make it work better. And since I've put those on, I've had no issues with magazines dry firing. You can of course switch them in a dry fire mode. If you actually get some pliers and you pull the switch back about 3mm, it will be loose, and then you can dry fire the gun for amusement's sake. Though I wouldn't do it too much because you're kind of just putting unnecessary wear on the gun for no reason. But it's up to you, you paid for it. There's the back of the selector. Now actually I can show you how this works very briefly. If we put it up on safe, we can see there, now this will actually pop all the way up because that's how it comes off. So just put it on safe and you can see there that when you pull the trigger now, it's actually blocking the sear at the back. Now when we move it down to a fire position, it's clearing that, especially in semi-auto because middle position is full auto. For those that aren't aware, move it down and now it's in the fire position. That is still functioning fine. If you want your selector to be a little looser, what you can do is actually pull it up and just bend it out very slightly and put it back down until you get the sort of tension you want. That's not something I had to do. The selector was very, very stiff when I first got it. I need to put a lot of force, but after I'd manipulated it about 20-30 times, it loosened up a bit. But if you're really having trouble, as I say, you can lift it up and just bend it slightly. And it's still in perfectly good nick. The hammer will have to be replaced eventually. The auto sears do tend to snap on these after a while, but literally all these parts you're looking at you can buy on Simoon or any other kind of spare parts website in the Far East. They'll deliver straight to your door and they only cost a few dollars a piece. Like this hammer you can buy, I think you can actually buy that on Mil-Spec Solutions in the UK, and it's literally about £6 or something like that, and the other pieces are, a lot of them are less than 10 quid. So for something you're not going to have to buy too often, I don't think there's a lot of point upgrading to steel parts personally, because once you upgrade one thing to steel, you're going to have to upgrade the rest, because otherwise it's going to chew the other parts around it. Now, as I mentioned before, this is not the stock nozzle. It's constructed out of a stock nozzle, but this has a modification done to it by FG, if you see there.
there is a little screw. Now it's essentially the same as an end pass. You can adjust your FPS up or down depending which way you rotate that screw. I pretty much set it to about 330 to 340 FPS on a 0.2 in the average summer conditions I tend to play in. I've only adjusted it a couple of times. Literally when it comes to the winter or the summer I change it and then I just leave it because it never goes over 350 anyway, even if you have it all the way off. At least I've found with the gas I use, it never goes over 350. So the nozzle on this design, it's not actually sprung loaded like some, it just moves loosely. It has a pretty good seal anyway. Something I would recommend doing is, you can see there, just get a bit more centered, there is an O-ring. Now that O-ring is actually particularly good because it gives a little bit more seal around the chamber, so that's something I do recommend doing. It's not normally there, but just get an O-ring and sort of that's quite tight and it sits in there. Make sure you don't have any grease or crap, which I do because I'm touching it all. Grease or crap on this anyway. You shouldn't have any grease or lube on this either, because this is what actually pushes the BBs on the feed ramp into the chamber. You shouldn't have any grease or lube on any of this because all you're doing then is just blasting it down the barrel. The only place you need to put any sort of lube is the tractor this runs in, and mostly the O-rings at the back because you want those to be lubed, and I put silicone oil inside that as well. But nothing forward of this point. You don't want anything in there, up there, on there, that's not what you want. The nozzle's very easy to remove on the GHK series. All you do is you take out this screw and then you can just pull the nozzle out, simple as that. You will have a bolt stopper, which is what the screw actually goes through, and that's why the bolt can't come out further than this, because it's holding it in. You remove that screw, but pulling out the nozzle will pull out the bolt stopper as well. And to reinstall it's just the opposite. It doesn't even have to be super tight. As long as it's shallower than this ridge, then it's fine. I've not found that that screw loosens at all anyway. It's very good at staying in place. So now I'm going to cover one of my other favourite things, upgrades. So what do I recommend in terms of upgrades out of the box for this system? So a lot of people talk trash about the stock hop-up bucking, the grey one. A lot of people do say that they're not very good in terms of lift. Like if you want to lift BBs like 0.36 or something, then they're pretty bad. I personally use 0.28s or 3s in this gun. I don't find I have to adjust the hop really if I switch between them. I've mostly used 2Fs by either Jeff or Longbow, which I've found both to be very good. Do not use bios. They shatter. That's just my experience. But as I said, I don't have experience with the stock hop-up bucking because I changed it straight away to a maple leaf one. It worked brilliantly, as maple leaf buckings usually do. The only trouble was not so much the bucking, it was the nub and the stock hop-up chamber and adjustment dial that the gun comes with. Obviously now I'm running an FG hop-up chamber, which uses 2 ball screws to actually adjust. The trouble with the stock system is when you're using a hard recoil kit, such as this one, which is the heaviest one on the market I think, it does tend to adjust the dial because of the higher recoil impulse. And the trouble with the maple leaf is it's a very precise hop-up. I've found on other guns I put them in, including AGs, they like to be in a very specific spot to really shine. If you budge them slightly, then they tend to deviate quite a bit. At least that's just my experience, where the dial just kept adjusting itself. So something I do recommend, if you can find it, is the FG ball screw hop-up chamber. It is amazing. Like once you got it set, it does not move. It's a bit more annoying to actually get it set in. If you watch my review on it, which I'll link in the description, you can see how it's adjusted with an Allen key essentially. So I can't give enough praise to that hop-up chamber. A good hop-up, a better hop-up system in this gun is something I would recommend. What else would I recommend? Well, in terms of things that I think are definitely sort of needed to bring this gun out, that's actually it. The rest of it is all just stuff that's for fun really, like a recoil kit. You don't need that. I mean, I enjoy using the stock unit at the moment. You still have a decent recoil impulse, has a nice clack to it as well. The charging action still sounds very nice. As for the trigger group parts as well, you don't need to upgrade to steel. You can do, there's W&S steel parts, RA Tech steel parts. I wouldn't really recommend RA Tech anything except their impasse, because I just constantly read about fitment issues with everything, so I'd avoid that. But as I mentioned earlier, bear in mind that if you upgrade anything in the trigger mechanism to steel, you're going to have to upgrade the other pieces as well, because otherwise the steel part's going to bash the hell out of the alloy parts, because it's a much denser metal. That's just physics, I'm afraid. So yeah, if you're going to upgrade, you need to do it properly. Don't just chuck like a steel hammer in it and expect it to not chew the other parts up after a certain number of rounds. That's just going to happen. You can get full travel kits, in my opinion, not really needed for this gun. I mean, if you're looking to just have more recoil and a full travel kit, you can get the W&S. It does have a steel hammer. If that's your thing, that's up to you. I'm happy just having a hard recoil kit and half travel. So that's half travel. The real one comes all the way to about there, of course, in terms of feeling like, you know, you're getting the true cock in action. When you got a hard recoil kit, you're not even going to care, trust me. This gun's so satisfying to use. So if you're one of these people that thinks, oh, I don't really like the half travel thing, the gas efficiency is much better as well, because it resets quicker. So it works wonders for that, especially if you're using the stock gas piston as well. The stock bolt carrier group, should I say. I've had no problems with gas efficiency on this gun at all. It's been absolutely solid. Like, even in cold weather, as long as you're not firing on lots of automatic, which I only tend to shoot for fun, and that's all you really need, I think. So yeah, there's no worry about gas efficiency. These hold a lot of gas. They weigh a bloody ton. I'll go into that in a second as well, when I talk about lessons learned in terms of kit. But in terms of upgrades, yeah, that's it. The externals of the gun, I have altered this slightly. I'll just give a quick zoom in. I have changed the metal. This is much blacker when you get it, and the wood I redid to make that a bit darker. Then I beat it up a little bit and lacquered it to keep it in the condition I wanted, so it gives it that more kind of used look. This gun looks a million times better if you weather it up a little bit. Don't overdo it, because it will wear naturally. It's got a very resistant finish on it anyway, and since LCT make the externals for this gun, you're not getting anything subpar. Like, these things just look the biz. They're fantastic looking guns. So close to a Relay K in terms of the appearance. Even the markings are all there and everything. I mean, I know a lot of Airsoft brands do that, but they're all there. The sight markings, etc. It's all how it should be. In terms of maintenance, you don't really need to do loads. Just make sure the inner barrel's clean. There's no crap on the hop-up rubber, the part that contacts the BB itself. You want to make sure that's clean of debris and oil. As long as the barrel's clean and this is clean and you keep the thing lubricated, it's fine. I'll post a picture now, actually. What you saw there was a magazine that I stuffed on the ground by accident in a skirmish. I didn't notice it was even dirty, and I stuck it in the gun, and I fired the whole thing off. And all that crud got inside the receiver, the chamber, nothing. I didn't even realise there was no difference in function. So, much like a Relay K in some respects, you can get a fair amount of crap in this without it jamming the gun up. Last thing I'll talk about in this section actually is the pistol grip. Some people might not like how skinny that is. You can see there, that's a very thin pistol grip. Reason being is it's a gas blowback, so it has no motor. It's normally AEG, of course. This is where the motor is housed if it's a version 2 or 3. Version 3 is what an AK is, so you're going to have that thicker grip there. Now, if you're used to that, you're going to suddenly hold on to this and go, whoa, that's weird. But it's fine. You get used to it. You can make that a bit thicker if you want. You can even change it to an aftermarket grip, like Magpul and Tapco and companies make grips for this. If you go on Simoon.com, if this really bothers you, go on Simoon.com and look up the Magpul AK grips, the Mo grips and stuff like that. Might look a bit funny combined with the wood, but you can change this to rail systems and folding stocks and any other crap you want with various adapters. So you can make it look however you want, pretty much. I like it to just look standard, because that's generally how I like my AKs if they're from this time period. Bear in mind as well, it doesn't have a rail on the side for mounting optics. Just to add a bit of context to a couple of more things I'm going to mention in a second. This is what I've been running it with mainly. I have used the 69 webbing, which is pretty horrific, because that's the old Soviet 69 pattern webbing, for those that aren't familiar.
The magazine pouch is basically a 4-cell magazine pouch on your right hip, sort of on the front, slightly to the side. Now, the weight of these magazines, and they are pretty heavy, they're the same weight as a fully loaded magazine 7.62x39, so it makes your kit very off-centered. This, however, is the Russian Smersh, and that's what I've been running it with. So just a bit of context there. Got a dump pouch. You want a nice big one because these mags are chunky, right? And they're heavy, so you want a nice big one. Butt pack in the middle, nothing in the middle, that's why it looks funny like that. So I've got magazines there, and a magazine there. It's not in the rifle, the dump pouch. So that's basically the kit that I run with it. And now there's a couple of things I'm going to mention if you're thinking of running a GHK AKM. Now, because of the weight of the system and obviously it being gas, some of the dynamics of how it works is a little different. So I think that's something that might be a good thing for someone to hear. Being this is a gas blowback rifle, that means you have the real magazine capacity. So you, well, slightly more in a GHK, you have about 40 rounds. Still not very much, and not much over the reel still. And if you're using it in single shot, which ideally you should be, because gas consumption and limited magazine capacity and things like that, that implies you're going to have to use the sights more, because you have less rounds, you're shooting single shots, and you need to make your shots count. So this isn't the kind of, it's not like an AEG with the high rounds per second where you can just sort of follow the stream of BBs without really having to use the sights. Now, because of that, it's very important that a mask like this is going to be no good. Now, you'll know what I'm talking about if you've ever owned one of these. You stick one of these on. Yeah, you're not getting a good sight picture with that because it's banging into it. Something that's very important, you're going to want a mask like this. This is the one Tigris design. This will mean you can get a proper cheap weld. Now, that doesn't it's not super specific to, GHK AKs. It's specific to aiming. But aiming is more essential with this because you can't just hose everything down due to the format of the guns. Definitely a thing worth getting. Call it an upgrade for the gun if you like. If you don't have one of these already, this is something that does help. It will make you perform better with a gun like this. So something else I want to cover, and that's the magazines. As I said, they are heavy, alright? So it's important that you do in your gear before you actually get this gun. Make sure you've got a good dump pouch that's a reasonable size. Now I've got the nice big chunky one, so I can put 4 mags in there if I want. It's important as well that when you're running a rig with this gun, don't run like these. I don't recommend these chest rigs, the cheap ones you see on eBay that have these very sort of thin shoulder straps. They'll cut into you with this amount of weight. And another thing I want to talk about in terms of weight, which with this gun is 90% of the weight is going to be the magazines you're carrying. I carry 5, some people carry 8 and stuff like that I've seen on the internet, so the weight adds up quickly. So one thing I do recommend, that I've learned from experience, is you want to keep the rest of your kit as light as possible. It sounds like a no-brainer, but actually some people really need to be told that until they realise that it's better to have minimal kit, especially if you're running, a system which overall with the magazines is much heavier than any sort of AEG. Something else I recommend is obviously a decent sling. It does help. This is just an original Soviet AK sling, but a sling I do recommend if you're not worried about getting something that's period. The Vickers Tactical Application Sling, Blue Force gear. I've got one of those on my AR and it is amazing. So the last thing I want to touch on, those things said. Would I recommend this if you're in the market for a gas blowback AK? Well, obviously the answer is yes. I mean, I absolutely love this gun. My funnest airsoft moments have been with this rifle right here. It's been a hell of a ride and I'm sure we'll have a lot more fun years together. When something does break, so what? Like I say, the trigger parts, they'll be the thing to break. You can buy those on the internet for a few quid. I haven't actually run my Tokenrui M4 MWS gas blowback rifle yet, because obviously lockdown and whatnot. So I haven't been able to take it out, but I'm sure I'll enjoy both. But I'll always come back to this, ultimately, I think. This is probably still my favourite. I think it still will be. I'm just an AK fan. Final pros and cons about this after 2 years of use. Right, well the pros, it's a hell of a lot of fun. It will change your playstyle. I think it will make you a better player in a way because, like I say, you can't just go everywhere just hosing stuff down. There's a bit more skill involved. You're having to reload more often and stuff like that as well. Third thing, there are plenty of aftermarket pieces and support for this platform available, especially now in the present day. There's a lot of, there's new stuff coming out all the time for these actually. Internal parts and rail systems and stuff, like all the Zentico stuff that you can find on Simoon. If that's your thing, if you want to leave it bare bones, and obviously you'll limit it to mostly internal parts, but there's all sorts of stuff you can do with these. So those are my main 3 pros. It's a lot of fun, makes you a better player. Lots of stuff you can do to upgrade these, a lot of support, big community out there if you've got any problems that will answer your questions, Facebook groups and all the like. So what are the cons? The weight of the magazines. Yeah, they are quite heavy. The price of the magazines. So yeah, basically just the magazines, yeah, they're the con. Yeah, they're a bit heavy sometimes, especially if you're lugging this thing around on mountainous terrain all day, like my site, which is pretty hilly. It can get a little bit heavy if you're not used to it. I'm more than used to it now, but when you first start, it might hit you a little bit if you're used to carrying something like a G&G combat machine featherweight, and then you suddenly get this. It's gonna surprise you a bit. I don't know what the other cons are. Some people would say leaky mags, doesn't work in cold weather. I don't really think that's a con. If you've got the thing set up right, you're using the right gas, you can run this all year round. I mean, you can run this with the stock bulk carrier group on black gas in 4 degrees. I've done it. I can't speak for Sub-Zero, but if it's getting that cold, just take an AG. If somebody really wants a gas blowback rifle, they're going to buy one, aren't they? So there's no point trying to sort of obsessively talk them out of it. But yeah, there are a couple of cons, I suppose, to using it over an AG. I mean, there's a bit more going on. But to me, that's actually a plus, because I like maintaining guns and stuff like that. So it depends on what your tastes are. I think that pretty much covers it. So that'll be me signing off for now. If anyone's got any comments or questions, please feel free to post them in the comments. And if you would like, you can rate, comment or subscribe for more content. See you in the next piece.